Hey, everybody. You are about to hear a brief retelling of the movie No Way Up. Enjoy the movie. A woman's body falls into the ocean in the middle of nowhere. She floats there for a short while until her eyes open in terror. Brandon wakes up abruptly and discovers it was a nightmare. He serves as the governor's daughter Ava's bodyguard, and ever since he let her mother fall victim to abuse, he has been struggling with internalized guilt. When Ava and Brandon go to the airport, Ava meets up with her pals Kyle and Jed. The lads are upset that Brandon is joining them on their vacation, but Ava explains that her father wouldn't have let her go without security. Ava notices that there are unusually few people on the airplane as soon as they board and decides to sit in the rear for solitude with the boys. The plane rattles a little bit just after takeoff, but this is usual. Shortly after, the aircraft begins to tremble once again, and the engine is visibly heating up. The pilot assures the passengers that nothing is to fear and that they had only unintentionally struck some birds. Nevertheless, the aircraft soon begins to tremble once again, and an engine catches fire. When the pilot signals for everyone to buckle up, a portion of the engine breaks and flies off, hitting the side of the aircraft and killing a passenger as everyone begins to worry for their lives. A shift in pressure is brought on by the wall break, and everything within the aircraft begins to fly off or shake. The bags all fall off and smack individuals in the head. Even when they attempt to cling to other people's hands, unbuckled passengers are flung around the aircraft and forced from their seats. Many individuals are shot to death as a wall bursts off in a matter of seconds, leaving a massive hole in the side of the aircraft. The wind is too powerful for Brandon to hang on to the floating man, and he gets blown away too. A second person attempts to hang on to the chairs, but the metal gives way too soon, and a number of the seats come off while the guy is still seated. When a man is ready to collapse, a flight attendant rushes to save him, but ends up falling with him. The plane crashes into the ocean, filling it with water as soon as it hits the sea, losing the majority of its occupants in the process. As a piece of metal stabs Brandon, the force pushes the chairs forward, crushing several of the passengers. After sinking for a few minutes, the plane finally stops when it becomes lodged on the ocean floor. Ava, her companions, and flight attendant Danilo are all still alive since the plane's tilt has created an airlock at the back. But Kyle's arm has a fractured bone. Concerned by the strange sounds they are hearing, the gang looks out at the lake. Rosa and her grandma Marty are taken to the safe location by Brandon, who appears out of nowhere. Danilo begins chest compressions on an unconscious Marty, and after a few minutes of nothing happening, Marty awakens. Rosa then inquires about her grandfather, and Brandon is forced to inform her and Marty that he tragically passed away. As soon as the group begins to worry, Brandon assumes leadership and helps to keep everyone calm. They must remain cool and wait for rescuers to discover them since the airlock indicates that they are safe for the time being. When Ava looks at her phone, she can't get reception underwater. She points out that the plane has a hole in it and that they should swim out, but Brandon tells them that their chances of surviving in that manner are slim, so they have to wait. Danilo tells them that assistance ought to arrive shortly because the pilots must have asked for it before to the collision. Brandon then clarifies that, as a precaution, they ought to have extra oxygen on hand. Although Danilo claims that the aircraft has 2 emergency fuel tanks at the back, when checking them, he discovers that they are empty. At that point, Brandon offers to jump in and locate the medical oxygen tank that one of the passengers had, as Marty recalls. Marty begs him to bring her husband's hat before he goes. While checking the individuals who have passed away in their chairs, Brandon jumps in and swims across the hallway. Without looking out of the window, he removes the husband's hat that he discovers. Next, he locates the oxygen tank and fills it up as well, then he checks the hole. To his surprise, a shark that has entered through the hole attacks him as he chooses to swim on in an attempt to find whatever else he can take. Brandon is bitten by the beast right away, and he fights to get rid of it as best he can. The gang notices ripples in the water, which suggests that something is happening, and they get concerned. The waves abruptly stop, and Brandon reappears, warning the others to keep back and barring some rather serious wounds on his body. He gives the headgear and the oxygen tank to the others while panting severely, then he apologizes to Ava. After he's pulled back into the water, the gang witnesses the shark's tail snaking out as it devours the unfortunate man. Terrified, the gang retreats to the employees' area and decides to stick with Brandon's suggestion to wait. Subsequently, Marty volunteers to tend to Kyle's arm, revealing that she met her spouse while working as a nurse during the war. When Marty repositions the bone, Kyle cries out in agony. She makes a makeshift splint out of bandages and several thick magazines. A helicopter is circling the area outside, looking for the downed aircraft. Although they don't see anything right now, they have priority orders since they are aware that the governor's daughter is among the casualties. Returning to the survivors, they hear a creaking sound and briefly see movement inside the plane, suggesting that it may crash again at any time. When Jed becomes overly pessimistic, Danilo releases the oxygen tank Brandon had retrieved. They understand that sharks have entered to consume the drowned remains at that very moment when they notice the water turning crimson and hear sounds. The plane trembles a little, and they witness sharks swimming by their window, striking various components of the aircraft as they pass. Rosa is starting to grow too terrified, so Ava reassures her that they will be saved. But the helicopter's fuel is running low and it hasn't discovered anything yet. After monitoring the water level, the gang determines that they have around 3 or 4 hours left before the water reaches the rear. They are unsure about the plane's durability, though, because they can hear the metal groaning and see some water seeping through the roof. Abruptly, the aircraft begins to descend, tumbling for a few minutes while a number of boulders tumble out of it until it becomes trapped once more. The party is lucky to escape unharmed, but the water level inside the aircraft is rising more quickly as a result of this new angle. The party decides they have no option but to swim out of the plane because it is evident the seabed isn't as solid as they had assumed. Rosa claims that she learned in school that sharks dislike bubbles, so they'll need to figure out a strategy to divert the sharks. The issue of being able to hold their breath for that long remains, but Kyle remembers something at that very moment. Some of the passengers were wearing dive gear. Danilo adds that such items are in the luggage hold, and they can enter through a hatch, but he speculates that since the oxygen tanks are probably empty, they won't be permitted inside the aircraft. Ava believes that the remaining dive gear could still be useful, but Jed is too negative, so she runs off to the bathroom, pretends to take a pee, and breaks down there as she hears the creak of the jet. Rosa learns from Ava that it's acceptable to be afraid once she emerges. There are barely 15 minutes of gasoline remaining in the chopper outside. Finally, they see plane components floating about at that point, so 2 divers plunge into the water to begin their search. They spot the jet quickly, and the moment they get nearer, the gang begins to gesture at the window. While the second diver goes to the window to reassure the survivors that everything is well again, one diver dives in the direction of the hole. The group tries to alert him as the shark suddenly materializes behind him and he is unaware of it. When the diver glances back, he sees nothing, but when he looks at the plane once more, the shark has dragged him down and murdered him. The party glances out the window after hearing a lot of noises above the plane and notices the diver's leg drifting away. The survivors glance down the passage in remembrance of the other diver, but no one appears, leading them to believe he has also perished. They are forced to go as the chopper is virtually out of fuel outside. At least the backup is on its way and they have the locations. Ava returns to the survivors and notes that they may grab the other diver's oxygen tank if he is dead. She can't be certain, but she thinks she sees a shadow when looking underwater. Jed steps on the chairs to try to get a better look, but he slips and falls into the lake. He reappears chuckling, having been playing a practical joke on them, while the gang becomes alarmed that they are unable to see him. But because he doesn't emerge in time, the shark quickly locates him and bites him. The gang approaches Jed as he fights off the shark's onslaught, grabbing hold of his arms and pulling him till they are safe. Regretfully, upon learning that Jed is missing a leg, Marty orders Rosa to stand behind the curtain while she tends to the injury. When Jed learns he won't be able to compete in any more triathlons, he sobs. Marty uses several seatbelts to create a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Ava offers to go look for the dive gear as she's still determined to go. Ava jumps in even though they find the luggage hold is wet when Danilo unlocks the hatch. She scans the area with a flare, not realizing that there's more swimming under the sacks. She eventually locates the scuba gear, but just as the flare goes out, she is frightened by an octopus. When the others notice that there is no longer light, they start to worry, but happily Ava quickly returns with the equipment. There are just 4 diving suits and masks when the gang opens the luggage. They quickly examine the glass after hearing something strike the jet, but because there isn't a diver nearby, they assume it was a shark. Jed is dead by the time they turn around again. Ava tries to do chest compressions out of desperation, but Marty pulls her back and exposes her to reality. Abruptly, the aircraft descends once more, but this time, it comes to a rapid stop as the cockpit fractures and serves as an anchor. They must go quickly since the water level is rising quicker. They want to utilize the little oxygen canisters from the emergency masks to blast bubbles at the sharks, keeping in mind Rosa's interesting information. The issue of swimming such a distance remains, and Kyle breaks down, admitting to a traumatic childhood injury that left him a poor swimmer. But after hearing encouragement from Ava and Rosa, he decides to give it a go. Then, without delving too far into the water, Ava collects every oxygen mask she can find. The roof is beginning to crumble, and the sharks are continuously attacking the plane. As the group begins to change, Marty offers to be the one without a suit since, given her age, she would just make everyone go more slowly. When the survivors enter the ocean after bidding Jed farewell, they see the plane is gradually beginning to descend once more. Abruptly, the cockpit completes its fracture and plummets into the chasm, indicating that the plane will shortly follow. Rosa is asked to accompany Ava, who Marty asks to go first. When the girls discover a shark blocking their path while swimming, they quickly open an oxygen canister to frighten it away. They continue marching when the path is clear, and soon Kyle and Danilo follow. As the water rises inside the jet, Marty watches the young people leave, knowing she won't be able to make it. Instead, she remains behind and waits to be reunited with her husband. Kyle loses control at that point and swims back to stick his head out of the last remaining pocket of air. When a shark unexpectedly emerges from the luggage hold and attacks Kyle, Danilo tries to run back for him, but Kyle is quickly devoured. When Rosa and Ava discover the dead diver and remove his tank so they may fill their lungs, a scared Danilo dives to meet them. Then Ava uses the tank to send Rosa and Danilo through the hole, but just as she is about to go, a shark gets in the way. Swimming back, Ava stops, allowing the shark to enter without detecting her. But her tail smashes her mask off. Ava then begins swimming toward the front after realizing that additional sharks are entering the area through the opening. Ava manages to escape through the front hole just before the jet plunges into the abyss, but fortunately she manages to grasp onto the seats and push through just as the plane begins to descend faster and the water pressure prevents her from moving. Ava may now begin swimming to the surface, but she quickly runs out of breath and collapses. Her body naturally stops swimming, but happily the flotation devices propel her upwards. Upon reaching the surface, she inhales and awakens instantly. When Ava can no longer see the others, she starts to fear, but just then, the helicopters arrive and manage to get her out of the sea. Rosa wonders about her grandma, and Ava informs her that Danilo and she have already been saved. Rosa tosses her cherished plush toy into the ocean as a final farewell to her grandparents and then drifts off to sleep in Ava's arms.